Hi, everybody. This is Joel Ludlow, Evolution JKD. I am joined by Ian, who is smirking because I tried this once already and my voice just blows up the microphone. So I'm going to work on being a little quieter today. But, and that's kind of a cool deal to go with some of the stuff we're going to talk about, which is being open and trying new things. And sometimes just because you did it one way doesn't mean anything else. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today: martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, probably some other stuff. And we should probably drink some tea as we get into some of these topics and avoid it, but we'll probably step all over them.
It's what we do.
Yeah, that's
But
what we do.
I think that it's important to bring up these points of conversation because they are not things that are commonly discussed, and also things to help shape perspective for not only Sifu Joel and I's training, but also perhaps your training as well, and gaining insight in relation to things that you might already be doing or things that you may have never thought about.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to think we have all the answers. We're just making you hopefully think. And that's kind of what we do. My thought process, honestly, and my view on martial arts in general, Jeet Kune Do specifically, is way different now than it used to be back when I first started training in martial arts or in Jeet Kune Do. And it's going to kind of get us into some of this stuff. I see a lot of people jump into a camp and they jump onto a bandwagon and they get into here or there. Um, and I think one of the things that Ian and I try to really bring up is the difference between teaching as an instructor at a school versus an individual. And we're going to touch on some of that. And this is true for kind of everything. You don't have to follow what everybody does. But so when I was training with Jerry Petit, we worked on a lot of things. We worked on my personal skills, we worked on my teaching skills, we covered a lot of things. And he told me to teach everything. Let the student figure it out on their own. And that's kind of where we're going with today. Um, a couple of things in there. The idea of concepts isn't wrong. I know I just jumped onto a whole bunch of people's toes in there, and a bunch of other people jumped up, started cheering. People saying that your JKD should be unique isn't wrong. My Jeet Kune Do is unique. Ian's is very unique. We are individuals. However, the training methodology is a little bit different. Um, Over my years of teaching and continuing on my own journey, combined with my real world experience, moving with other martial artists and applying skill in the real world, I've found that the movements themselves are important. A jab doesn't mean shit in a real situation against an aggressive and skilled opponent. If you're thinking jab, cross, stand like this, or hold my hand here, then you're getting your ass kicked. That's kind of the reality of it. Ian and I often have these discussions because we've been there, done that. And, we're not saying we're the most powerful people on the planet. We're just saying, hey, we have a different mindset. And that's what we're looking at. It's not about, hey, I'm trying to prove that I'm the best. It's just helping others expand because I had a lot of help in my own journey. I still have help on my journey.
It,
Um,
it's kind of
Go
difficult
ahead.
because there's a wide gamut of training that we've seen in martial arts, not just with Jeet Kune Do, but just in general. And, the thing that comes to mind for me is going back to the same principle of, for one, what are you cultivating? If you're cultivating for the sake of being competent in some form of combat, whether it be sport or street or law enforcement or whatever, you have to have some aspect of training the aliveness, as Sifu Joel always says, of everything has to be alive. And what we mean by that is that it has to be a true reaction. It has to be something that you're not necessarily expecting, but you're training a movement or you're training a response, a conditioned response that comes out on its own, as opposed to a cognitive train of thought. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face, all that stuff. It's
No.
true. Um, Sometimes we have people that are training, very specific katas that make them great at reacting to the specific kata. Some people are on the complete opposite side, that if you don't do insane hard sparring, that you're never going to be like, a tough fighter or something like that. And it's not, to me anyways, like talking about what the topic is today, it's not even necessarily that anybody on those sides are wrong, but I feel like if you're just on one side of the coin or the other, you're missing a lot of the in between that we believe that gives you
Yeah.
so much more.
Yeah, and to go with that, so the idea of concepts is you're going to train in other martial arts to get the aliveness of Jeet Kune Do, and that's accurate. Um, you can do that. You can find those. You can use training drills, I guess, from other martial arts to help you grow. And as a martial artist, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Jeet Kune Do is just one training program. I can go in and do kickboxing and follow those rules. It's sparring, folks. It's not that complicated. I can go do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and it's going to help me understand grappling. I've told people that for years. I have a wrestling background, same thing there. It's going to help you get big. As a wrestler, the aliveness is there. My whole team was on the varsity high school team for 4 years. Whatever, whatever. Lots of people wrestled, and a lot of people are way better than me. But my point is, we all had different things. Our coach was the same coach, but each of us individual kids had a different way to wrestle. It was still wrestling. No one came up and said, "Hey, you're not doing wrestling. You're not from this school." Yeah, we are. Look, I've got a singlet. It's got my school name on it. Here I go. And just because my friend might be really good at a double leg, and this friend was really good at a, a fireman's carry, this other one was really good at headlocks. I was happened to be really good at what's called a crossbody, and we still had things that put us together, and we still wrestled each other. And by me working against this kid or that kid in in my schools, in my practices, in my training, it helped me for when I was challenged in the sport of wrestling against other people. That's the same thing we're supposed to be doing. It's not rocket scientists going over there and trying to put somebody in space or on Mars.
Did you
It's about getting better.
did you ever hear about the Ninja Turtle theory? Because this is really cool how this kind of comes up.
No,
Okay, so I don't know if this is
but
true
I'll
or
come
not,
back to Ninja Turtles in a second.
but it makes sense. But check this out. So all of them were trained under Master Splinter.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why they all have the weapons that they do is because that was supposed to demonstrate their biggest weakness. So Michelangelo had issues with control, so he was given nunchucks. Donatello was given a stick because he was good with technology. Raphael got the size, which is primarily a defensive weapon because he was too aggressive, and Leonardo was the only one that got swords because he couldn't he had trouble committing to, killing.
I actually don't know. It's funny that you bring that up. One of my training partners back when I was at Combative Arts Academy with Ed was
Mhm.
Kevin Eastman, who is the creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I haven't talked to Kevin in years and years and years, but it would be funny to ask him, be like, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think?"
Yeah, I would be curious. That would be crazy.
I don't know. Ed may still talk to him. I don't know. A lot of people, same thing with me. I have students come back and say, "Hey, what's going on?" or reach out. And I
Yeah.
do that with my instructors all the time.
But
Uh,
the moral of
I
that
don't know if
though
Kevin's
is
reached out or
is
not.
basically saying exactly what you're saying in a means of you don't have to have training to understand that, of whether it's true or not is one thing, but everybody got something different from the same teacher.
Now, I'll use this as a really good example. I've brought this up several times with you. Bowling style drill,
Yeah.
right? So, one of the really cool things is I trained with Ed Monahan, who is a full instructor under Jerry Petit. Then I trained with Jerry Petit and became a full instructor underneath him. And this was over a period of years. So I would see what Ed was teaching and what he was sharing from his journey. And then I would go in and I would have my personal training. And Jerry would always say, teach to the individual. And that was something that Bruce did as well. And this is kind of the meat and potatoes of everything, whether you're wrestling or doing Jeet Kune Do or doing some other sport or even, art or music, you're going to be there. We might all be in the same music class, but you're playing a different instrument than I am. Uh, so there's a couple of different switches in bowling style. There's a lop style switch against someone reaching over and grabbing. There's a low hit with a replacement step, and cutting in with the forearm of the rear hand. There's a riposte, whichever way you want to say it. Give me a break, folks. I'm from Oklahoma, so who knows? But interestingly, when Ed teaches it, he teaches it the way that Jerry taught him, which was the lopsided grab, switch is the first one. So it don't really matter. You pick A, B, and C. Well, Ed did A and then B and then C. Me, I teach B, A, and C because that's the way I was given. I was given the replacement step first because that was my weakness. I had my elbow up with the rear hand and it was a giant hole and I got hit. So that's the one I had to work on. I had to cultivate against my own weakness, which Ian can tell you, I am massively big on replacement step.
Replacement stuff.
It is
Yep.
a huge, huge factor in my training and in my way that I express myself because I was able to learn a lot of things from it. Ed's was different. That was his weakness, was probably reaching over and grabbing that back fist coming in for the bong sao drill and getting lops out, and had to work on that counter. So it goes into what you were talking about, Ian, of building to your weaknesses. Now, compound that to every student who trained under Jerry Petit, and we're all different. We all approach the movements differently. And so there's two parts on that. One, like replacement steps has become really pivotal for me, but I also use it because in my own training and my own journey of working the replacement step and developing a skill against one of my weaknesses, I found a lot of other things, which goes into the concepts idea.
Right.
And I'm able to take that and use this movement to teach a lot of other things. Like I always say, look, we want to do replacement step to the front, not to the back. I don't teach that because honestly, I don't need to teach it. It's pretty easy to run away from a scary bad guy. It's really difficult to move forward into them.
I think
So,
the thing that you and I had talked about, which was brief and over text, was like when we were first discussing this topic. Something that I wanted to bring up again was the difference between something being a concept and then something being a truth, and how to navigate that if you're doing Jeet Kune Do versus JKD concepts. Because if you know, or you don't know rather, they're not quite the same thing. Sifu Joe, do you kind of
yeah.
want to like tell us what concepts is?
Well, the concepts is it's a I don't remember who coined the phrase. Someone was applying it to the teaching approach that Dan Inosanto has sort of taken of I'm going to use the Kali, the Filipino martial arts. I'm going to use the Muay Thai, Savate, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'm going to use these other arts to help teach and guide students into that higher evolution. I the idea the idea of concepts isn't bad because if you understand the concept, I can show you anything. And it's really about me taking my experience and trying to help you tap into your experience with it. I think that over the years, it's gotten a little bit off.
Yeah.
And I won't say a little bit, it's gotten a lot off. So people have forgotten that they're learning Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to understand that grappling aspect and then apply it here to the Jeet Kune Do and following the principles of trying to hit somebody
I think
or doing kickboxing and using like look, that's a great way to do controlled sparring where I can work on distance and timing. There a lot of people have gotten focused on doing a thing instead of learning from it. And what is your goal of learning this? Do I want sensitivity on the ground? Do I want to understand how to lock? Do I want to work on the aliveness that comes from grappling? I know a lot of people move away from Jeet Kune Do and other martial arts and go into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because it has that aliveness factor. There's a quality to it that is just attractive. We really, really like it. It's a thing as humans and as martial artists we really gravitate toward. And I think other people have gotten maybe kind of gotten off into the other thing. And the other extreme is to go into people who are more, uh, pure or whatever. Um, Jeet Kune Do as this is only what Bruce taught, and we're going to stand this way and move this way, and I can't do anything else other than these set movements.
Tao of
I don't
JKD
agree with, yeah,
cultist.
I don't agree with that either. That's really the opposite of what Bruce was looking for. I would caution everybody again, going back to that difference between an instructor in a school versus an individual, and can you make it your own? Yes, you can do whatever the hell you want to. And you're not going to be thinking about what it is, but it's a training program. And our job as instructors is to provide all the information. If you don't like a heel kick, then uh, that's up to you. But my job as your teacher is to show you that heel kick. You may not like, an overhand, but I'm going to show you an overhand. Uh,
It,
what you decide to use is up to you, but my training is going to be there. Look, and you're not going to think about what it is because, and Ian can, tell his own version of this. When shit goes down, you're not thinking about a technique. You're not thinking about a movement or I need to stand this way. You're just moving. And maybe a good analogy for this is people think of their martial arts training as swimming, like your competitive swimming. I'm going to do freestyle and I need to think about my breath and I'm going to be here. I'm going to do a butterfly or I'm going to do a backstroke. We're not talking about that. Those
yeah,
things are beneficial, but we're talking about you're getting pitched overboard into choppy water and it's cold and waves are trying to drag you under and you're just trying to keep your head above water and then get to safety. So it's not about swimming in a particular thing. Like if you if you get pitched overboard and you get back onto the boat or to safety, whatever that means in this analogy, that's the goal. uh, oh, you didn't flutter your feet the right way, or you didn't
yeah,
do the backstroke properly. Like, who gives a shit? If you were thinking about that, you drowned. If you're thinking about that in a fight, you're getting your ass kicked.
right.
So there you go.
It's a much different thing when the variables at play are things that are out of your control. You know, if we do take swimming, for example, like you're in a pool, you have this setup, you go when the thing tells you to go, and then it's you in the
Mm-hmm.
water and you are trying to be 100% your best and be 100% efficient. And the more that you focus on that efficiency, the more that you tend to improve because it works as your overall performance.
Absolutely. And
When,
by training in those very specific ways of swimming, you're going to probably be way better than the average person in swimming. But
to be fair,
and that's fine. And that's fine if that's your goal, if that's what you want to do. Look, I'm not here to tell you otherwise, but don't say that it's open water swimming uh, or rescue,
right.
if you're in, saving your life.
And to
It's
be
not survival swimming, it's competitive swimming. And that's okay.
and I was going to say too that it is very likely that those people are probably just being in the moment as well. But
Mm-hmm.
the difference is that they are way more safe, you know? And not only
Yeah.
that, but if they're doing multiple heats or whatever, like they have coaching in between. So they have things that they're like
Mm-hmm.
taking into the next try, the next attempt, right? Even in
Mm-hmm.
sport fighting, like you've got a coach or someone in your corner that's giving you advice
Yeah,
on what's going on.
absolutely.
Whereas, you know, if it is a matter of survival or whatever, it's like, good luck, buddy.
You might have a whole lot of people yelling at you. That is a real thing, but it's not, you know, if you've never seen a fight happen like outside, there's usually a circle of people or somebody's yelling at them,
Yeah.
and there are people
Usually that's
egging
a
you
threat,
on.
you know?
Yeah, it's like kick his ass, man, kick his ass, kick his ass, punch him, slam him down.
And
They're watching a
dude,
spectacle.
it's like I've
They're
heard
not.
some horrible shit. Get that knife in him, you know? Fucking where's the gun at? Where, you know what I mean? So like different things that
Which
if anything only heighten your sense of fear and adrenaline to solve the problem even more quickly. It's terrifying, man.
which gets you into something else. Like, I think Jeet Kune Do is a great training program. It's not the only thing I've trained in, and I don't think it is the only thing that has um, had a huge impact on my martial arts. I've trained in a lot of martial arts, and as a martial artist, I found the training program of Jeet Kune Do to really benefit me. Something Ian and I talked about was weapons, which goes into concepts whether you're doing, and there's a lot of people out there who go to Wing Chun. I don't think so. That's just because I got trapping and energy drills that were given to Jerry Petit from Bruce directly that he had modified, and I just find him better. I like him better, but that's me, and that's what I teach. But
Before you
weapons are a big deal.
before you go on, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but just from speaking from personal experience, I wanted to agree with you on why I personally like the energy drills from JKD compared to Wing Chun. Not that, I'm sitting here trying to do that, but the thing with JKD is, and at least from what I got from you, is that everything made sense from the beginning. Everything had
Mm.
a very clear relationship of how this leads to this, this leads to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is why going back to the beginning is going to make everything better. And this is how you cultivate, and in terms of practicality. But there was no like, I got to sit here and ponder on it for, 10 years in order to figure out what this is supposed to do. Hey, your punch
No.
failed. Instead of giving up and accepting a hit, you turn it into a bong sao, and that turns into a hit, and then this turns into a hit, and this turns into a hit. And that clear relationship of, I don't want to call it a system, but of the dynamic of what it is that we cultivate is something that to me was the coolest thing about what we do.
And interestingly enough, a lot of this stuff is two things I want to bring up before we jump back into weapons. One is things start recycling. You'll start to see how things recycle, and you start at point A and you go B, C, and you get these moments. And at each point, you can explore where to go. But then at some point, you find yourself back at A, and you're like, oh, wait, I've already been here.
Yeah.
And then I just keep going. And then, or I find myself, I go from A to D. Oh, wait. And now I know I can go to E because I've explored that. And then you make all those adjustments for it. The other thing is, I talked to some students about this, and it was a really interesting thing. There's the whole empty cup analogy and putting out everything else. And I just want to share sometimes it's not the knowledge, sometimes it's our other stuff that's in the way or our closed mindedness. It's a lot of mental stuff that we have to empty out of our cup. Uh, and it could be I like a jab a whole lot. Well, okay, well, that's filling up your cup. You don't have room for anything else. You're so fixated on, I have to have a jab, or I have to have a front snap kick, or I have to stand this way, that you're not opening up to learning anything new or exploring anything new. No one says you have to keep it. Uh, you're just exploring it. And I think the benefit of exploring it is really good. Also, sometimes it could be something else. It could be just you got personal life all up in your business, and it's kind of hard to put it to the side. If you're thinking about your job all day, all through your training, you're probably not able to focus as much on your actual training. So emptying your cup can mean a lot of things. And that's almost a skill in and of itself, to be able to empty out the things that are blocking your exploration and your discovery, which is, I hope you figured out by now, that's what we're really after. All the training, whatever you're doing with whoever you're doing it, if you're not exploring the movements and trying to discover something, I just don't see how you can possibly grow.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing was, I chatted briefly about weapons, and he talked about training with a friend of mine, Michael Ha, and I said, look, when a weapon's in your hand, you have to focus differently because it's a weapon. It's consequences. A stick or a knife or a gun, very, very different. You have to take care of the weapon. So a lot of the simultaneous. Do you still want to attack the person? You do. And I think in your training, that's a thing is, this movement, I have to focus on the weapon. I do this in taijutsu. I've done in other things too. And but when I move, am I affecting the person? Just like a pox sow is going to affect them, just like a lop sow is going to affect them. I maybe not hitting them in the throat or poking them in the eyes or hitting them in the groin, but I am affecting their stability and their capacity to counter me and use that weapon on me. But you have to be a little bit different. It's going to change because it does augment the other person. It's a power up for them. If they have a stick in their hand, it changes your distancing.
To me, when I think of this, when I think of how I would have described, like, how, if I were to teach concepts or something of the sort, right? When we talk about JKD, we talk about it's a lens or a perception or a way of thinking that is this kind of like checklist of four really simple principles that scrutinizes whatever it is that whatever movement we're trying to apply JKD to. And when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about concepts, in some cases there's a literal translation, but in other cases you try to use that lens to put it into different situations that are outside of our normal training regimen. The thing is like you still have all of those, um, you still have that same processing, but as you said, your priorities change. The game that you're playing has to change to where you have to respect certain rules. And one of those rules,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, is if somebody else has a weapon, you can't just
Nope.
intercept, you can't intercept a gun from 10 feet away. It doesn't work. You can't intercept somebody swinging a sword at you if you can't step in range, or if somebody has a
Yeah.
long spear, the dynamic has to change. So there has to be modifications made to that. I think the issue that a lot of concept people get into is they get into really cool, like fucking superhero movie shit. And then it becomes this whole other
Mm-hmm.
theory crafting thing that, you know what I mean? That, like, I don't know. I saw somebody trying to punch an elbow one time. Somebody did an up elbow and they're like, yeah, you punch the elbow. And it's just like,
What?
yeah, it was a long time ago. It was a Kali guy,
Oh,
but,
that's
he was saying, oh, you block and you punch the elbow. And it's just like, look,
It
man,
seems weird because a collie guy would go the opposite. I would think they
I
would use the elbow to just. I mean, when I was training that, that's what I learned was limb destructions. You're going to bust the hand by using your elbow.
it's because those people train in Kali and they forget that they don't have a weapon now.
I guess so. I don't know.
Well,
Seems
I
I
mean,
I think that does do it. I see a lot of people uh, in the concepts world who I think maybe do run into that. Hey, if I have a knife, going low to the body might be a thing and then coming up. I actually don't like starting that way because it doesn't make sense to me because the other person just hits you in the neck, right? You're
right.
just exposing yourself
You're just
for it.
dropping your
But
guard.
if you have a knife and you've got extended range, okay, that makes it a little bit of a different story.
But even still,
Um,
you don't drop everything. You can cover your
yeah,
hand. You can, like hold on for dear life. You can use something you can fetter, go high and then low. If you attack high, you're affecting vision. That's a fact.
yeah.
you
And
know?
then you're drawing everything up, which is manipulating. You're drawing the hands or the defenses up to guard the face and the neck area, and you're opening up the lower abdomen region. um, yeah, again, it just makes more sense. And maybe it's because maybe people just don't get it. There is, I'm gonna guarantee you, like, I was looking at somebody once recently, and I looked at how they were standing, and I was like, ooh, yeah, there's some pictures floating around of me standing just like that.
Mm.
So I would like to talk shit about them and say how goofy it is, but I've done it. And I think that's one of the things is, I've been there, done that, not just with um, these particular movements, but in our whole experience of exploring, we've had to go through the process of, hey, here's this, let's consider it and let's move through. Well, that doesn't really make sense. And again, ours is, hey, you get pitched overboard and you have to, fight off some sharks and whatever sea monsters to get in choppy water and try to get, safe, as opposed to you're in your lane and you're swimming against another competitor. That's fine if that's what you want to do. As I've said before, in some other things, if you are going to anything you train in is going to be beneficial.
Right.
You do cardio kickboxing, it's going to be beneficial to you. You do aerobics, it's going to be beneficial to you. Because honestly, if they have a weapon or if they're a scary bad person and they're going to kick your ass, run away.
I
Because
mean,
they can't
hell,
catch you, they
even
can't punch you.
yeah, even if you see, the same punch coming at you over and over again in a kata, like
Mm-hmm.
that's something. That's not. And I think that what we're trying to say is that like the training, even if the concepts in some cases or whatever we find to be, what would you say, ridiculous in some cases, there's still
Some cases, but I
value.
think that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there's still
I think
value.
sometimes it's more about they're a junior instructor who's showing a junior instructor level drill with that particular outlook, but they're calling it advanced
Right.
Jeet Kune Do. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's,
No.
and maybe that's the difference.
And
Yeah.
sometimes, the nature of things, just because it makes sense doesn't make it true. I think that's really important to remember. But also, like,
Mm.
you should go deeper if you're doing something that's concepts, because it's like trying to do math without understanding multiplication. If you try to solve these things with algebra and you got all these formulas or whatever, but you don't have the fundamentals, concepts does not provide fundamentals in most training. And I think that it's really important for you to kind of like go back and do your due diligence and see where all that stuff comes from and see how the concepts relates to the origin of what it is that you're training over, because again, they're not the same thing. And that will give you a deeper perspective of building that lens like we talk about, and then applying it to stuff that's not even, concepts. It could be your jujitsu or your Muay Thai or whatever.
I will say that I have noticed, and this used to be the thing when I was a very beginner martial artist, that all martial arts lead to the proverbial summit
Yeah.
and everybody ends up at the same place. And it doesn't really matter if you start with uh, karate or kickboxing or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or whatever. At a certain point, you all kind of get up to the same place and you're looking at everything the same way. And we're all individuals. We're going to express ourselves differently. But you know what? We're supposed to. If we all get the same we all get the same trumpet and we're all playing the exact same song, it will still sound different. Or maybe better ways, if we're all singing the same song and we're all trying to hit the same notes, it will still sound different because our voices are different and unique to us.
And correct
And
me
so
if
how
I'm
we express ourselves, if I throw a jab and you throw a jab, it's going to be different still. Go ahead, Ian.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was gonna say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we talked about like this relationship between, Sifu Jerry and Sensei Chadwick and all that stuff, and all of them kind of agree on a lot of different things, and that's because I think that rather than I'll try to say it as concisely as possible, but rather than focusing on is it this, or I'm going to take this path, I'm going to take this path, is finding the truth of the movements and then having your own perspective on it, because you'll notice that in all these things you train, just like as you said, stuff starts to
Mm-hmm.
recycle. It might have a different outlook, it might have a different context or whatever, but dude, a punch is a punch.
Yeah. I found because I have trained with some really phenomenal old school martial artists, and while they do express themselves differently and they have different training, their outlooks were all the same. And they got along really, really well because they could appreciate what the other person was doing and how they expressed themselves because the movements were true and genuine and based in reality. And they had cultivated skills to accomplish goals and you knew what it was. uh, Ian does tricking and you can see somebody do a trick and you're like, hey, that's what that person likes to do. This person likes to do that trick over there. It's still movement and you can still go, that's freaking awesome. I love that. It's not my jam, but it's cool. I love what that person does. I think it's really slick. Same in martial arts. If the movement is genuine, if it is expressed with authenticity, and we don't mean that just philosophically or conceptually, we also mean like you're actually like doing it for a purpose.
Right.
That punch has a there's a method to the madness. Why are you punching that way? Well, because it makes sense in this situation. That's what people should be looking at. How is that really good? And I think if that was done with a bit more openness and some emptier cups, then the idea of concepts would be in there. And the people who were rigidly trying to hold on to something would realize that they were holding on to maybe some of the wrong things. I'm trying to hold on to this stance or, this thing, and not understanding that it's just a tool to get me to something greater.
I almost feel like it wouldn't even be called JKD concepts. I think it would just be like a higher elevation of consciousness of how do we make this more efficient? How do
Yeah.
we make this, how do we optimize, to put it plainly?
Yeah.
So,
And, Ian and I do have a that's why my school is named Evolution, because I've been evolving, I've been growing, I've been taking what was given to me, not just by Jerry, but by other people, and exploring it with the help of Ian and others for a long while now, and still growing. And I think that's maybe the difference. If you look at other martial arts, I was looking at wrestling just recently. That sport's been growing. It's been growing and growing since when I was wrestling, uh, like 35 years ago to now. It's grown because all the knowledge that was gained by one generation was passed on because those wrestlers became coaches and passed it on to the next generation. That's what happened with my coach. That's what I'm trying to do, is pass on that information to help those who are able to get what they can out of it. Just not doing all wrestling.
dude, look at tricking from 2006 to today. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you would think that these people
Ian
are
has told
superheroes.
Ian has told me over and over, and the same thing. Go look at figure skating. Go look at like Olympic figure skating from 60 years ago, and you'll see the same gold medal figure skating individuals. You'll see 10-year-olds out there doing that on the ice as a
Yeah.
regular thing, because the understanding of how to get to that level, how to cultivate the attributes for that are there. That's what we want people to do, not just fixate and hold yourself locked in. Well, this is the routine. This is what we have to do. We have to hold here. No, use that to keep
As a
growing.
jump off
You
point, yeah.
Yeah, you should take that and then continue to build upon it. Ian, any closing words from you?
Not much. Just thanks for checking in. Check out our other episodes. We love doing this, and it would help us out a lot if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, as we're trying to get monetized and hopefully do this a little bit more often.
Check out all the other stuff we have. It's fun. We like it.
See you next time.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.